So my name is Sascha Cowan. My pronouns are they, them, or like he, him equivalents in gendered languages. I am a trans person, a white trans person, neurodivergent from Montreal in the French part of Canada. What is my life? I have come from an upper middle class background, a pretty like privileged family, and even though like transition and like working in art has been doing some like, conflicts and everything, I'm pretty lucky not to have like a very stable and like loving relationship with my family, which has been bringing me a lot of like stability in my life, and I'm very grateful for this. Yes. I have come out as a trans person, or a trans mask person 4 years ago. Been on T for 3 years now, and though it has like twists and turns, I'm now mostly identifying as just a trans person and proudly femme, and going through like transition and just transness as a way of just fucking up with gender in a very DIY way, which is very important to me. And outside of this, I'm like a pluridisciplinary artist. I work mostly in theater art, theater, drag, performance, and also have a pretty important practice in like craftsmanship. And so I do a lot of like sewing, like everything that has to do with textiles and tattooing. Yeah, I currently live in Berlin. I've been living in Berlin for a bit more than a year now. I immigrated here in 2021. Yes, I used to be living in Montreal where I was born and raised. Right now I'm here under a freelancer artist visa, which was, even though it was kind of a struggle to get, now since I'm just Canadian, was not such a hassle because like white privilege prevailed again. Outside of that, I feel like when I was back in Montreal, I used to be very engaged in my community, where like community organizing was very important for me, and like drag scenes and more like, and also like creating art and more like institutional spaces with my like a theater company called Eratom. Now immigrating has been making me take a step back from that and taking more time to just like arriving, and now I feel like it's time for me to be able to like give energy back to the community who has been supporting me so much and just arriving here. Mostly, I think my area of implication would be specifically in the small scale, so like community, city-wise, or like trans communities, like in a network across trans and queer communities across quote unquote the world, Europe, or like through like Canada and the US. But I do believe that my strength, or like my energy, is much more not useful, but like can be put in a much more like important way in a very like small scale community basis. So I feel like when like to whom like I'm addressing in my commitments in art and stuff will definitely differ from like different like practices. So for example, when I do more like drag, community organizing for like events and stuff like that, definitely I am more specifically addressing to like our trans and queer communities. A bit, I think I will be repeating a bit, but I think that's where my voice can be like a more have more of an impact in a way, or my energy can be more. I feel like I have much more energy to give towards like my siblings than like queer family and chosen family. because I do believe, I don't know, I have this thing, I do not believe in like queer entrance, or it is not my action is not for like queer entrance normalization and like normativity, and I do think that we just need, I just want to like fight for us to just be able to exist in our like own like weird ass like self and like world in a sense, not necessarily to like live outside of society, but like sometimes I would love to in a way. So that's for that. I think even I think I didn't forget to mention that, but I have this like theater studies background. I was at university, and even when I was like, for me at university, for example, the people I would address myself to is not necessarily a larger public, but mostly to record and to, like, the importance for me was to like record and have like memory and like knowledge on queer and trans arts, like underground arts, like for like drag and any like quote unquote like lower art that would be told, because it's not like told in institutions. So in the end, I would like address myself to like fellow queer and trans people, even like from in university or outside of university, to talk about like gender studies, but also like queer art, and like how can we like talk about it in words that are not imposed to us, like that are not the words that like has been told, like taught to us by like the like white art history and everything, or like, so finding a way to talk about our art in our own word. So I feel that's how I would address that, and even and I feel like it was something that has been recurrent in my thinking of when I do like art in a more institutional context, like for the theater and the performance and stuff like that. I feel like sometimes I've seen a lot of like queer art in more institutional background where you assume that most of the people in the audience are like not queer, and like if you see queer theater, like queer theater piece, like the audience is most probably like 90% like queer people who are just like, yeah, finally we're gonna see like our own stuff, and you see on stage people are like try to like convince you that gender is a construct. I'm like, it's fine. Like, I think I'm kind of like knowing that, and like this is why I feel like I want to see more. I want to see different stuff. I want to see what I want to see in art, and what I try to create in art is like possibilities and trying to create new ways of doing gender and doing transness and doing like art in our life. Like I don't feel like I need to be told, for example, that our life is so hard and so difficult. Like I kind of know it, I live it every day, and other people's live have it like so much like worse and sad. Like, and so, not that we should always just go like an uplifting, but I feel sometimes like when we address ourselves as like artists to like queer people and trans people, we have to like have this knowledge that like most probably the people who come to see us are our siblings in our community. And so maybe sometimes I want to go towards more of a utopian way of seeing art and of creating like background for it, like very inspired from the book from Munoz, like Cruising Utopia, has been a very fundamental work for me. And when like he talks about queerness being in the horizon and queerness being a way of like seeing the world not as not enough, has like talked to me a lot in a way of like transness in art and in life, and just existing as a trans person brings the future into the present, and also makes me like go forward in a way, because I don't necessarily like the present is a bit like toxic and a bit like shit. I don't necessarily want to live in the present right now, and that's why sometimes when we create our communities, our little world, our little families, we're creating our little utopias and our little like, we're like to go back to the quote Foucault, like the utopia outside of the world and in the world in a way, because we know it's still there outside, but we kind of, it's where like sometimes like drag shows, parties, and even like theater spaces for queer people, and even for like, and for allies and for people who don't even know, maybe probably don't know that they're queer, but they're kind of interested, and they're just like, why would I go to see a theater and then this like this piece that seems very interesting to me, but I don't know why, and like tickles something in me, and then you go, and maybe you see something that you're not sure you understand, but like stays with you, and I feel that's what the beauty of like queer art and trans art is, that it like infects the mind. For like the first time that you learn, for example, that gender is a construct, you cannot unlearn that. You cannot not know it. Like, you know it, it's there, it's with you. You can like really fight it and try to push it away, but it's gonna grow into you like a fucking disease, but it's great, like in a great way. That like at some point it grows, and at some point you cannot deny it anymore. And you cannot deny for like in a very personal way. The day I was like, oh, I realized officially like it came to terms with like I am trans. The first thing I said, I told myself, like, oh damn, it's gonna be hard. It's not gonna be easy. It's like, but you can't deny it anymore. When you cannot not do something, I think that's when it's the most true way of doing things. You know, I went somewhere else. It's interesting. It was interesting to me to think about this question because right now I feel like I'm very like specifically at this moment when we're recording this, I'm a very like not turning point, but like a crossroad into my life towards like commitments into my community. I feel like it's been I've had this little like New Year's intentions moment, and I feel like the bigger part of like what I want to do in the next moments of my life moving forward is really to extend myself and to give back to a community, especially with, like as I said before, like immigrating here, I focused much more on myself and like just arriving and finding solid ground to like put more like my roots here, and I feel like I'm lucky enough to now in less than like in a year feeling more stable. We'll see how it is in like a few weeks or months, but I'm in a good place right now. So it's a lot of the project and like possibilities that I want to really like in my head in a way, right in my head, but in the like future, which is also very exciting in a way. I think one of the projects that would be very important for me to do is to start producing or helping produce shows or just events that are like the concern like drag, but not necessarily only drag, but just drag as like a big umbrella term for like queer and trans art, that pluridisciplinary. I feel like that would include like music, dance, and everything that like feels like someone who has like something to say about or just something to like show to our community, to our like siblings. I feel like it's always like been important to me to like try to see how we can mix in or like take back from like what I was able to learn from like theater school and stuff like that, and like kind of like steal it from that, and just like how can we use it for ourselves and for our own like art and events and creations, and try to, because I feel like sometimes what is lacking for me sometimes, and what makes me want to do more, is to have bigger dreams for ourselves and bigger dreams for our communities, for our art and for possibilities, and try to like, go like bigger and higher, not necessarily in the like making more money or making more things, but just taking space for ourselves and like taking what we need, what we deserve, and like not thinking, okay, we only deserve to be in that small basement in this thing because it's easier, it's safer in a way, but how grand would it be to like have much more space for ourselves and to like be able to like welcome all our families together. So yeah, that's like one of the things. Another thing is just coming up. I feel I want to start to more like specifically performance theater project with my dear friend, and like we have a creative duo called Eratum, and we want to work on this book essay fable from the early 70s called The Faggots and Their Friends Between Revolutions. I came upon this book just last year, and it kind of like it spoke to me a lot, especially in the way the author talks about community and the importance of like creating communities in a very small scale way. And I think for me was really like touching to see and read like also like queer novels, and like almost like it's a fantasy, but it's also like a kid's like book in a way. So I want to work on that, but who knows where that will bring us, because usually it's like we always like start from like one thing and then we go like there. So I think that's inspiring in a way. On a very, very much like smaller scale, I've been working a lot recently with, and I love it like more and more recently with a dear friend of mine who organizes Kufas here, which is like a dinners, where they're specifically like toward like they specifically want like mostly like queer and trans people to be able to come there, because there's a lot of this in Berlin, but they're like much more in like the anarchist quote unquote scenes, and it's usually it's not queer friendly, but it's not queer dominated in a way, which is usually pretty normal in a way. It's very leftist, and usually people are usually very chill, but sometimes it's nice to have space for us in a way. So I would like to. This is a very small scale, like neighborhood type of vibe, which I really appreciate too. It has been able to cook there for people has bring me a lot of joy. So it's nice to be able to share food with families and meet new people through that, and that's always fun. Yeah, I feel like now I was gonna repeat myself a bit, but yeah, I think queer like art and what I want to like do more of that is political in the way that like as I said it infects people. But oh yeah, one last thing that I feel like I want to do more is working more on my tattooing practice, because I feel like it's been so important for me, like getting back into my own body and taking like links to my flesh in a way, because I always felt like I think it comes with my background of just like transitioning and everything, is like I would never felt so linked and like tethered, like threaded to my body in a way. And so like customizing my body, and like I feel like I put tattooing at the same level of like hormones and like cutting your hair or like it's all like body modifications that help you just like catch a grip of like your flesh, which felt a bit like very spiritual in a very beautiful way. And I've done it a lot on myself and on friends and people, and I feel like if I'm able to, like you said, it's a beautiful act of giving energy, and it's a privilege to be able to do that for people. So I would love to be able to like do that more. Yeah, I think that was the question that seemed very hard, surprisingly hard for me to answer. I think there's the answer I would like to say, and the answer that I should say in a way, or that I feel like I should say for like a kind of like a politically correct blah blah way. Not politically correct, but like politically like just in a way. I feel like first, like before, I used to proudly be like, yeah, like I would be, fuck yeah, I'm a feminist, but I feel like, yes, and like the values and stuff, but I don't think that would be the first word that I would say and use for myself. Like, definitely not. I think, especially more in the recent years, I think going to more into like trans and queer studies has been taking a much more important part of my life and my activism and my way of seeing the political, but also I think it comes together in an underlying way. If I had to use like a feminist related word, I would say definitely kind of like trans feminist in a way, but I don't know, maybe it's just because like feminism had like a bad rep. Now it's like sadly mostly a lot of like links to my mind to like TERFs. It's just freaking sad. It is really sad, I feel, for feminism, because it's done so much for us, but also not. I don't know, I feel like if we're talking about like definitely more like a trans activist, or political beliefs, like I believe in like queer liberation. I take a lot of inspiration like more like anarchist politics too. Yeah, I feel like I think it depends on the context. What I would say. If I would say it's like I think if I'm in a room full of people who are definitely like would tend to be like a big like cis straight hetero like white people, and then they're like, oh, I'm not sure about feminism, and I would be like fighting for feminism and be like, yeah. But then if I'm like with a bunch of like trans friends, I'll just be like, oh, fuck that. Let's just be like in our like little like trans like riots and like Yes, I think even like I think it's important, like if we talk about specific, let's say like the title of the project, like Herstory, I feel like it's very interesting to like call it this way, and important in a way, but also like going into the details. It was really inspiring for me to think about like history, like even like I think giving it a new name gives it a lot of like possibilities. Because if we were trying to, sometimes if I try to think, okay, how can we rewrite history? How can we rewrite history? Like, do we really want to rewrite history? Like the way that we think about history has such a like specific like upward going, like looking down the way, or down looking up. It's like, oh, like the past is either this magnificent like thing that we can never be as good as, or we are so much better and we have like being like in the evolution of like the past. And now so much better, it can only go better. But I feel like if we like think like a bit like who like thinks about like history in this like constant spiral, or like so many other like anachronical like vision, and like the fact that like history itself is not a chronological like sense. I think maybe we having a new name like Herstory or any other thing helps us think that like of history in a full new way, like if we try to think about history in a queer glance, which like for me the queer glance is not necessarily talking about queer people, but like having a vision that tries to like go beyond like the binary, beyond the like cis straight like hetero and everything, like vision, and beyond ideally a white also like in colonial vision. Then we can try to think about like a history or like a herstory that how to say, like thinks about the small things, thinks about this like the little events, thinks about the personal. Because even like through like a trans glance, like if we think about like just the trans life is anachronical, like it does, like, for example, it's usually sometimes it's like second puberty, sometimes it's like also you go beyond a way that like a body is expected to grow old, beyond the way that like we are expected to live through our life. So I think we can think about history in the same way, like that it's not up, down, or like always on like this one forward, but it's in the like very the path is very crooked and it goes in different ways, and can go back and can go forward. So maybe that's the path also, like that feminism is kind of taking, you know, like turning, coming back. That like I don't know, I feel like the spirit in a way, like quote unquote the spirit of feminism, like what it is bringing to us, which is trying to like in the end just take down like the patriarchy, is very important and beautiful and brings us a lot of political strength. So yeah, I will say that I am unsure right now if I am feminist, but also I probably am.